Over the last month, the markets have been undergoing extreme volatility. We have seen the Nasdaq 100 drop between 3.5% and 5% in a single day. We are seeing a combination of profit taking alongside some very real fundamental concerns that are finally catching up with these stocks. Microsoft is on track for its worst monthly loss since 2008, down nearly 25% in June alone. Oracle is down 39% and Meta is down 15%. The answer is, in my opinion, a free cash flow concern. Alphabet's free cash flow fell 47% year over year, while Amazon's trailing 12-month free cash flow collapsed 95% due to AI infrastructure costs. Now, the macro picture is adding serious fuel to the fire as well. The AI boom itself has been flagged as inflationary. The surge in AI investment and infrastructure spending is driving a demand shock that's pushing prices higher. For example, Apple recently hiked up the prices of their products by up to $200, and their stock plummeted 6% on Thursday. Microsoft has increased the price of their Xbox, and this is all a result of different hardware shortages, more specifically DRAM, where the price of these have nearly quadrupled in the last year alone. And just FYI, that's part of why Micron is seeing such massive growth. Now, after the recent Fed meeting on June 17th, it is clear that the fight against inflation is intensifying and rates are staying elevated. On top of that, investors have started pricing in rate hikes, with an 80% probability of a hike occurring by December 2026. And the last thing big name tech stocks want is rate hikes. That's simply because it makes financing much more expensive, which can eat into their revenue and margins. So the question really becomes, is there potential for a broader market cool down here? Because there's also something investors may not be considering, and that is how markets have historically tested new Fed leadership. When you look back over several years, you notice that the market's reaction to a new Federal Reserve chair tends to be negative. And now with these insanely high valuations, even prominent bullish investors like Tom Lee have expressed concern over a potential reversal in Q3 of 2026. Now, I'm a big fan of high income ETFs, especially in environments like this, as they fundamentally change the math of a market pullback. When markets get choppy, most investors are forced to just sit there and take it. But these funds seek to monetize that volatility. They generate income by selling options on their underlying holdings. And most importantly, they often collect higher premiums exactly when the market is under pressure, thanks to a relationship known as Vega. This income is designed to act as a potential buffer, helping to soften drawdowns. Now, high income isn't the only risk management strategy. There are 3 core strategies that I personally use in my own portfolio, and that is active management, high income strategies like covered calls, and hedged equity strategies. And today I want to focus on an ETF I actually covered a few months ago that uses the 3rd strategy, but also pairs it with high income generation, with a dividend yield of close to 10%, creating something truly unique. This ETF has historically delivered up to 50% less volatility than the QQQ and about 30% less volatility than the S&P 500, and yet somehow it still managed to capture similar total returns. During the April sell-off, it held up remarkably well, almost like a value fund, even though its core holdings are pure Nasdaq growth. It's a unique way to get Nasdaq-style exposure with a focus on stability. And the fund uses a complex strategy to achieve this, but once you break it down, it's actually quite elegant, potentially making it a compelling alternative to both typical high-income ETFs and straight index exposure heading into Q3 of 2026. Now, it's important to note that this fund wasn't always structured like this. In fact, it used to have a completely different ticker and strategy before being acquired by one of the most prominent high-income ETF managers in the market, NEOS, the same firm behind funds like SPYI and QQQI. I'm talking about QQQH, the NEOS Nasdaq 100 Hedge Equity ETF. Now, before we get into the mechanics, we need to address the elephant in the room. And Seeking Alpha is the only platform that provides these types of charts, along with details on dividend health scores, dividend growth, dividend yield, and distribution trends. But there's also so much more to explore, from in-depth fund analysis and historical returns to AUM trends. If you want to use the same tools I use, you're in luck because Seeking Alpha's summer sale has officially started. You can get $75 off their premium plan, and that gives you access to all of the same charts and tools I use. So definitely check it out, don't miss out. You can use the link in my description or scan the QR code on screen to get access to the discount. You can also get $124 off their Alpha Picks portfolio, or $173 off their Alpha Picks and Premium bundle. I have been using both for about 3 years now. Alpha Picks is their quant-driven stock portfolio that uses quant and momentum metrics to find potentially powerful long-term growth names, which I personally use to complement my ETF portfolio. And the portfolio is now up 400% versus the S&P 500's 100%. They have so far caught the trend in names like Micron, Celestica, Credo Tech, and AMD well before they boomed. Of course, past performance does not guarantee future results. Definitely check it out and take advantage of the sale while it lasts. Again, you can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to get access. If you look up this ETF, you'll see that it technically dates back to 2019, but it only has around $350 million in assets today. So naturally, you might ask, well, if it's so good, why isn't it bigger? Here's the story. This fund was originally launched as NUSI, N-U-S-I, a fund that I actually covered on my old channel about 2 years ago. At its peak, NUSI had nearly $800 million in assets, and back then, I warned investors about it because, quite frankly, the strategy was flawed. NUSI attempted to protect investors by buying 10% out of the money puts on the QQQ while holding the QQQ itself, and on the surface, that sounds reasonable. Put options increase in value when the market falls, creating a hedge. But here was the fatal flaw. Those puts only paid off if the QQQ dropped by more than 10% in a single month. That's the reality of deep out-of-the-money options. While they are cheaper to buy, the efficacy just isn't there majority of the time. It's like buying an insurance policy with a deductible so high that you almost never get a payout. And this is one of the most important things investors need to understand about options. Cheap protection is often no protection at all. In 2022, the market didn't crash all at once, it bled out slowly. Month after month, those puts expired worthless. Performance was drained, protection never showed up, and investors fled. Everything changed on November 8, 2024. NEOS acquired the fund, rebranded it as QQQH, and completely rebuilt the strategy from the ground up. They essentially fixed the engine. So when you look at the charts today, ignore the prior 6 years. Now, as mentioned, the fund currently has a yield of around 10% that is distributed every month, and an expense ratio of 0.68%, which is in line with most NEOS ETFs. So how does QQQH actually work? I like to describe QQQH as squeezing the QQQ. Imagine taking the wild, volatile NASDAQ 100 chart and physically compressing it from both the top and the bottom. That is exactly what QQQH does. But what I've noticed is that the risk management really kicks in when we see larger sell-offs. When you look at the fund's total returns in the last year, you can see that it managed to keep up with the returns of the S&P 500 and QQQI. But the biggest difference was during the April sell-off. QQQH captured a fraction of the volatility of both the QQQ and QQQI. And since the start of this insane market volatility, you can clearly see how well the ETF has historically managed to dampen the volatility of the QQQ, cushioning large drawdowns by almost 50%, which is significantly more than QQQI. And again, it was when we saw heavy selling pressure. So the question is, how does this fund achieve this? It uses a laddered put spread collar, which sounds complex, but really it's a clean 3-part system. The fund invests in the NASDAQ 100 and then overlays a laddered put spread collar. So step 1, the put spread. Instead of buying a single put, the fund buys one put and then sells another further out of the money. And this dramatically lowers the cost of protection. You see, a regular put option has unlimited upside as the market falls, but it is extremely expensive. A put spread, on the other hand, has a capped payoff, limited to the difference between the two strikes. So for example, you buy a put at $600, then sell a put at $590. That is a $10 spread, or $1,000 max value per contract. You give up some extreme downside protection, but gain efficiency and earlier activation. Step 2, the fund sells covered calls, and the premiums collected from those calls are used to pay for the insurance, making the net cost of protection close to zero. In practice, the managers likely sell slightly more calls to collect the premium needed to support the fund's 10% yield. I also think a portion of that yield comes from price movement within the strategy and not purely option income. When you look at the fund's holdings breakdown, you'll see it owns essentially the same stocks as the NASDAQ 100. But in addition to equity exposure, it also holds 3 sets of options tied directly to the NASDAQ 100 index. The fund has purchased 140 put contracts. It has also sold 140 put contracts. Further out of the money, on the upside, the fund has sold 105 call option contracts. It's important to remember that these options are written on the NASDAQ 100 index itself and not on an ETF like QQQ. And index options are always cash settled, so there's no physical shares involved. And when you're reviewing the holdings report, you can identify which contracts are sold versus purchased by the sign in front of the position. Negative values generally indicate sold positions, while positive values indicate purchased positions. And step 3, the laddered overlay. They don't just place trades once per month and walk away. Positions are staggered continuously, so protection is always live and active, and this is a critical detail many investors overlook. Now, the key to the fund's 10% dividend yield is tax efficiency. Most of that income is classified as return of capital, and if you've watched my videos on SPYI or other NEOS funds, you already know why that matters. Return of capital distributions are not taxed immediately. Instead, they reduce your cost basis in the investment, and once your cost basis is reduced to zero, any additional ROC distributions are generally taxed as long-term capital gains. All right, so what's my final verdict? Well, at the end of the day, QQQH is what I call a potential portfolio anchor. It is designed for conservative investors who want exposure to the innovation and AI momentum inside the NASDAQ 100 without exposing themselves to 100% of the risk. It is designed to provide lower drawdowns than the QQQ, consistent monthly income, and ROC-based tax-efficient dividend income every month. And that is all for this one. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit that thumbs up button for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not financial, investment, tax, or legal advice. Discussions of ETFs, investing strategies, market updates, or specific funds are general, not tailored to your financial situation, and should not be relied upon for decision-making. Investing involves significant risks, including total loss of principal, and past performance does not guarantee future results. I am not a registered financial advisor. My content reflects personal research and publicly available information. I may earn affiliate commissions from mentioned products or links disclosed per FTC guidelines, but these do not influence my opinions. Always consult a licensed financial professional and verify information independently. By watching this, you agree I am not liable for any losses or consequences from your actions. International viewers should consult local regulations.